my grandpa founded Baskin Robbins ice cream company, and my dad, John, grew up with an ice cream cone-shaped swimming pool in the backyard and 31 flavors of ice cream in the freezer. And he was groomed to one day join in running the family company with his father and my grandpa's brother-in-law, Bert Baskin. But when my dad was in his early 20s, he was offered that chance and he said no. And he walked away from a life of immense wealth and power to follow his own rocky road and move with my mom to a little island off the coast of Canada, where they built this one-room log cabin and grew most of their own food, practiced yoga and meditation for several hours a day. And they named their kid Ocean, of course, but less known is that they actually almost named me Kale. The reason they almost named me Kale is because in the Canadian winter, it was cold and they were trying to live off of what they could grow. So they would get one shipment of food per year, typically in the fall, where they get this big truck to come in and drive up the dirt road and deliver from this co-op, a bunch of grains and legumes and other staples. They would live off that for the rest of the year, that plus what they grew in the garden. And they would get seeds delivered with their annual delivery. And they were living on very little money. And so the garden really was like central to survival for them and for me when I was growing up. So I was a youngster, and Kale was like the absolute sort of epicenter of all that, because it could survive. It didn't get that cold, and so it could survive right through the winter. Well, to me, it's more recreational than a central part of my diet now. Not that I don't eat a lot of greens from the garden, but I also live right near a farmer's market. And the funny thing is, I talk about food all day long. I'm CEO of Food Revolution Network, but and I eat food like anybody, but I actually don't spend as much time preparing food or growing food as I used to, because I'm so busy trying to build this movement. But gardening still is this kind of touchstone for me. Like it connects me to the living earth. It reminds me what life is really all about. It's very humbling sometimes, because you're dealing with the bugs and oh my God, I went to seed. I didn't know it was going to go to seed yet. I didn't eat enough. All those things happen. But at the same time, it's so satisfying, and it's even therapeutic. I feel like one of the crises of the modern world is how many of us feel isolated and disconnected from a sense of belonging, from a sense of place, from each other, from our own sense of purpose. We're so many of us feel like we've been transplanted in a way, and gardening can give us a sense of roots, a sense of connection to the rhythms of soil and sun and rain and earth, the seasons, our own place in the universe, our own place on the earth. And there's nothing more grounding than playing in the dirt. So for me now, even taking a half hour out there, because I live in a little eco village, so there's other folks who are more responsible for making sure it happens, including my wife, bless Phoenix. But for me, it's more recreational. And being able to go out though, and when our kids are hungry and there aren't enough greens in the fridge, and I can just walk out and there's greens right there all the time, it's kind of amazing. Because greens that you buy at the market will only last a few days, and they start to get worse and worse and go bad. Greens on the vine, greens that are sitting on the plant, they'll last much, much longer, right? So you have a lot more time to work with, and they're super fresh. There's no degradation. So I just love that feeling of being able to harvest and to kind of reap what we've sown. The kind of long-term investment that gardening is such a beautiful way to prepare for the future.
So tell me, what is this fun for you? Why is this so fun for you?
Oh my gosh. Well, I guess for me, I think that food is just healthy, nutritious. Food is such a precious thing. It literally becomes us. It nourishes us. It adds flavor and richness to our lives. The act of growing it can be a source of connection and communion with the forces of life itself. And healthy food can also fight disease. It can give us energy. It can have us sleeping better. It can have us feeling better. It can have us living longer. So I think it's kind of one of the keys to human happiness, to human health, and to the survival of life on this planet, which is kind of a big deal if you think about it. And growing food, and we talk about healthy, nutritious food, the healthiest, nutritious food is going to be vegetables. The best way to have vegetables is organic and local. You can't get more organic or local than food you grow wonderfully yourself in your own backyard. So it's kind of like the absolute epicenter of awesomeness when it comes to the food revolution. And my whole life is about showing people that healthy food can help us to heal our bodies and heal our planet. And growing food is like the healthiest you'll get. So to me, this is just such an incredible opportunity, and it really does light me up. There's so much in the world that's depressing and painful and overwhelming and stressful. But here we've got something that really does show us a pathway to solutions, to possibility, to healing, to regeneration, to transformation. And that, I think, is absolutely glorious.
I agree 100%. And so with that, what is your most fun plants to grow?
Most fun. I've got to say, probably peas. There's a few things to really love about peas. You do have to put up some kind of a trellis for most types, but when they grow up, what you get is you get a lot of vertical garden, and then you have this wall of greenery. They grow super fast. And the nice thing about like sugar snap peas or edible pod peas in particular, I'm not a big fan of the ones where you can't eat the pods. I'm like, what a waste, like that pod's there. You might as well get the type where it's sweet, right? But there's a lot to love about them. They bear early, they grow early. You can put them in the ground sort of as soon as the frosts are done. And they fix nitrogen in the soil. So, they're like a cover crop in that way. So they actually will make the soil better for having been there, which is kind of awesome. And especially if you compost all the plant matter that isn't the peas, then you're getting all that back into the soil as well eventually. And then they're super nutritious. I mean, they're loaded with antioxidants. They're loaded with compounds that are actually good for eyesight. And if they get a little more mature, they're also high in protein. So I think legumes in general are nutritional superstars, but most of them don't taste sweet. But peas can, and that crunch, oh my God, that juicy, sweet crunch of an edible pod pea that's fresh. Here's the thing a lot of people don't know unless they've grown them themselves, is that they're the sweetest right at harvest, and then their sugars start to turn into starches the longer after harvest. So unless you have a pea like right away, it's going to start getting less sweet. And so from the garden, you can get the sweetest possible ones in the world. Word to the wise, though, wait for the actual peas themselves to develop a little bit, because if you eat just the pod, it won't be super sweet. And a lot of times I've been tempted, I'm just like, oh, I want to eat some, and I eat them before they're fully mature. So there's a sweet spot, literally, where they're the maximal size on the inside before they start to get starchy and turn into legumes. And so that's the spot you want to get, where they're like big on the inside but still super sweet and juicy. And if you can nail that spot, oh, it's so fun. And it's just one of those, I don't know, I have this kind of scavenger hunt instinct where I love to go out and just find things to munch. And I mean, when I was a little kid, I used to do that. I used to think it was extra special if you could literally eat it off the vine instead of having to pick it first. I was like, oh, that's the best, So I pretend I was, an animal and just munch away like that. And, it was a game I played when I was like 4 years old, So there's a part of me that still, it brings out the little kid in me, I guess, to do that.
I'm curious, what plant makes you smile? What plant feels like it's always growing just for you? What plant do you just feel like infinitely loved by nature? Like this plant came right for you.
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna have to say kale again. I'm sorry. It's got a special spot in my heart. It was almost my name. It was my family's lifeblood when I was growing up. And, I have to say, my mom and dad, this is kind of a funny story, but because kale was like the core of their survival for so long, even years later, when they were like, they lived in suburbia, they had access to food and stores. There was no shortage. Every fall, like come around maybe August, their life would revolve around the kale planting. And I remember one year they put in like 40 plants, and I was like, are we going to eat 40 plants? And they're like, we can never have too much kale, and sure enough, we had plenty of kale. And then I remember one time they like planted it like a week too late, and they were so stressed out. Like they spent like days just stressing about, is there going to be enough kale? And I was like, we could just go to the store and buy it if we run out. Like, it's not like we're going to die, but it was so deeply ingrained for them. This was the survival food, and then sure enough, we had more than enough kale, and we were giving it to everybody we knew at a certain point, So, but yeah, for me, that's still sort of the heart and soul food in a funny kind of a way. And it's been interesting to see it grow in popularity, because when I was a kid, no one knew what kale was. And now it's like all over the place. And it's like, it's the new tofu or something.
We hope you enjoyed these clips from Ocean Robin's presentation from the Superfood Garden Summit. If this inspired you to reconnect with your food, your health, and the living world around you, you're going to love the Superfood Garden Summit. We've brought together expert gardeners, food educators, and change makers to share practical, hopeful strategies for growing healthier, more abundant food right at home. Grab your free ticket at superfoodgardensummit.com. It all starts June 2nd. See you there.